Hey, welcome everybody. Excited to dive into this conversation. I've got Vikas here. Vikas and I go way back. I remember there was was it like a little Italian place we were eating at? You were trying to convince me to come to customer, me,
I
you, and
remember that.
Amir. And it was like, man, you probably regret that decision. I probably regret that decision. But I've known this guy for 6 years. Big go to market guy, but always have done kind of that sales world, but really in the CX space. And so today we were going to kind of take two threads. First, how he thinks about AI and more sales, but also how he's seen CX kind of evolve and change over the last few years, having been involved with it now for the last 100 years. So, Vic, thanks for joining, man. How are you?
Good to see you. And I
Yeah.
appreciate you reaching out to me, even though, obviously we hated each other back in our customer. That was the ride of a lifetime, and I thank you for being part of it. And I thank you
Yeah, man, that was, dude.
for
This
letting
guy,
me convince you over an Italian dinner to come on the ride with us.
yeah, that was a ride, man. But he literally, Vic, put us on his shoulders and man ran it through and hit some incredible numbers. So before we dive into kind of the AI and the latest, give us just a quick update. What have you been up to? What's going on at Yellow? How are things?
Sure. I spent about the last 13 months at a company called Yellow.ai as the SVP of North America Sales. And for those of you who aren't familiar with Yellow, it's an AI agent for customer or employee service.
Yeah.
So if you think about anything in your contact center, whether it's customer or consumer facing, where you're trying to assist them with their challenges, but more importantly, and a lot of large companies are dealing with this, you've got large volumes of employee IT and HR help desk requests that are coming into the business, and how do you help them with their challenges so that they can actually not worry about either their benefits or their password reset and actually go do their job. So that's what I've been doing, and it's been a tremendous learning experience for me and the team over the last 13 months.
Yeah, man, look, it's such a cool space. I want to kind of ask you about how you're seeing that shape up and a lot of entrants in the new entrants and AI is making it crazy. But let's get there in just a second because I do want to start on the sales side. Again, been doing sales now for years and years, and it does feel a little different, right? Like this AI thing feels a little at first I was like, you know what, maybe it's just hype. I don't know, it's another thing, but there is something here. Give me the state of the state. Like, how is AI and sales impacting you? What are some of the trends you're seeing? Give me kind of the take on your perspective.
I don't think it's unique to sales. I think it's certainly early. There are a lot of players, but there's some exciting things
Yeah.
that are being developed and being implemented. So, if you just think about top of the funnel, the tools that are available to you to research your accounts,
Mm.
capture signals or interest about your accounts, right? Then, kind of categorize the ones you want to go after and being able to do it at scale
Yeah.
without heavy kind of data mining
Mm.
exercises. And then you think of, in terms of the actual outreach and reaching out to these folks with very personalized messages that are specific to them and assisting. I think the key thing right now, as I look at it, is no leader should go out there and do bold proclamations. You see people posting on X about, eliminating roles, the death of the salesperson. And here's kind of my overarching thesis on all of
I
this,
love it.
whether
I
it's
love it.
sales or CX,
Yeah.
until the person they're interacting with is also an AI agent. So when it's AI agents selling to AI agents, then you can probably maybe eliminate some human beings. But as long as it's human beings that are trying to be sold to or are trying to be served in the customer service world, humans will play a
Mm.
heavy role. So I think
Okay,
how
that's
I,
helpful.
how
Yeah.
I look at it right now is, how do we make those human beings more efficient? But
Mm.
more importantly than efficiency is effectiveness.
I like that. Yeah, look, because I was gonna get your take on the hype because yeah, I think they're obviously so much FOMO. And look, I don't help. I'm a freaking punk on LinkedIn, but lot, I try to watch it sometimes. But a lot of role elimination. But yeah, you're seeing most right now. You're like, look, that's a little more in the hype train. The reality is though, from an assistant stand, from a co-pilot, from a there are areas where you probably need to not sit on the sidelines because there are efficiency gains to be played. You mentioned a couple angles like the signal. The signal stuff is kind of and being able to own person. I feel like I've kind of said personalization at scale for 100 years, but I don't know if we were ever able to do it. It feels like there's a little more realness here. So I like that angle, like grabbing some signals and maybe being able to personalize some interaction a little more. On the sales side, a little more down funnel, are there certain areas where you're starting to see the I mean, is it Gong kind of 2.0 type stuff, or where are you starting to think like, hey, these are some of the areas, again, thinking maybe a little more down funnel where people might want to check some things out from an efficiency standpoint?
Yeah, it's interesting. We talked about, CRM 1.0, which is just, the core CRM platforms that are out there and how they're massive database repositories, whether it's, information that's being keyed in by your salespeople, or it's now the 50 integrations that you have into other systems that are feeding into it. But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, it's a database repository. You move a little further along and you've got what I call the CRM 2.0 applications like a Gong that automated a tremendous amount of data and captured even further. Right now we have capturing the conversation data. So just
Yeah.
another data layer on top of that core CRM. But for a sales leader, it still takes a tremendous amount of effort to either look for signals or listen to the recording and all of
Yeah.
that. Now I look at like 3.0, which is how do we use AI to take that core data that we have about our customers or our market,
Hmm.
then all the live action data that's happening in real time on a
Yeah,
daily
for sure.
basis, all the conversations, and then give us insights into what's going on and allows us to do it at a scale that we otherwise wouldn't be able to do and being
Cool.
able to get
I
into
love that.
all those
What,
conversations to find the
yeah, what do you feel? I mean, you guys play a little bit in this in the agent world, and I'm still a little bit on the sales side, but you could hit this more generically. Like, is the future, as you think about those layers and those stacks, what is the future of some of these words like tools? Do I need a conversational intelligence tool, or will I have an agent that just assists me on calls? Like, how do you reconcile with sales leaders? I was just on one on Friday, having a hard time trying to figure out like tools versus agents, and how do I like start to navigate that difference? Do you have any thoughts on that question?
yeah I think just kind of separating the two. Tools are all the different applications that you're using today. The tool you might use in the future might have 20 different agents within it. You might
Mhm.
have a, let's call it BDR agent. You might have a product marketing agent, right? So think
Mhm.
about this. With the technology that we have today, you could have a product marketer that rides shotgun with AEs on every single deal that they're running.
Totally. Totally.
RevOps, you might have a RevOps agent, right? That helps the salesperson actually package up the order form and the commercials and maybe
Mhm.
even navigating that commercial interaction. So I think tools is a ubiquitous term that's going to just be the company that is delivering, or it might be actually multiple companies because some of these might be so specialized, that you may not be able to rely on one company to deliver them all. And in a nirvana state as a buyer, you would love to get to a position where you can say, you know what, I'll take AI agent from company over here that's best in class and
Mhm.
maybe a negotiation agent, and I'll take one over here that gives me the best signal. And
Mhm.
why not? As long as they can talk to each other, that's that works for me.
Yeah.
And that would be the nirvana state that hopefully we get to.
Yeah, look, I think that's a good clarification as you think about tools and some of these agents kind of working together. On the sales side, before I jump over into kind of CX for a minute, is there any words of wisdom you'd pass to say? I mean, you've been now neck deep in this, but any kind of words of wisdom you'd pass to sales leaders who are trying to navigate the noise in AI, and do you start here? Do you test and pilot? How do you make sure that so many people talking about failing, like it's not work? Where do you go to kind of win for these new guys jumping in?
So the first thing is, how do you position this internally?
Mm.
And what I've experienced on the CX side is definitely further along, but great
It feels
learning
that way.
curve.
I'd like that point. Yeah, CX is just, and maybe it's more. Why do you think that is? Sorry to interrupt, but it's definitely more mature. Maybe it's the.
Look, for those of us who've lived in the contact center world for a long time, we've been playing this game of trying to reposition the contact center as a profit center, not a cost center.
Right.
Unfortunately, that makes for a great tagline, right? If you're a software vendor or you're a consulting agency. But the reality is that within the four walls of that business, largely, I'm not going to say every, but largely the contact center is still looked at as a cost center.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
so that's why there's been this huge drive. You go back to the days of the IVR, the call recording, the workforce management software. What is
Sure.
all of that technology there to do? It's to optimize the human beings that are in those seats to
Yeah.
make them as efficient and effective as possible. So that's why the AI journey there is further along,
Yeah.
is because now very different in the sales world where you're talking about true revenue generation. We're actually a bit slower to adopt those types of technologies because it's not
Hmm.
it's let's say, oh well, we're going to make $2 anyway, so if we spend 50 cents here, it's not the end of the world. Different
Interesting.
mindset on the
Yeah.
CX side of the
I
house.
like that. Yeah, I like that. That's super interesting. So I was interrupting, but you said from the sales, if there's an internal sale that has to happen. Double click on that real
It's
quick.
how you position it internally. I think once again goes back to what I said with some of the excitement and almost the brashness about this is people going and making bold proclamations to their leadership team. Well, if you let me buy this tool, I'm going to be able to reduce by 20%, or
Yeah.
I'm going to deliver 50% more revenue. Stop. Just go and pilot, test it,
Yeah,
figure out
cool.
how it adapts with your actual environment. You may actually find that the AI tool, it makes you smarter, but it might mean that you're less effective up front. You might be effective downstream once you fully adopt it, but that
Mhm.
learning curve might take a while, right? Because think about this. Let's just use the whole thing about top of funnel signals. Right now, you might have a BDR team and you've given them 1,000 accounts to go after. You now go and implement an AI tool that actually really kind of
Yeah.
zooms in on the accounts that matter. And suddenly, until you totally go through that change management, you might only have 20 accounts per BDR that are going to
Yeah.
make them really effective,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? You're dealing with morale issues and all these things. So there's kind of that, it's going to be a cyclical
Yeah.
thing within
Interesting.
any organization. So one is how you position it up top and make these promises. The second is really evaluating all these tools. There are so many out there. And, my biggest thing, and, we're experiencing it as a vendor ourselves, is people want to try
I
before they
know.
make major commitments. And I
Yeah.
think that's actually okay. The third thing is you'll see with all of these AI tools, and this is the biggest limiting factor in any organization, it's the level of understanding that you have to pick up and really master the tool.
Mm.
Right. And so I think that's, and then you get the other extreme where you have some people that are really, I would say, bleeding edge on this, and they're playing around with it in their personal lives. They're starting to build apps on it, etc. You get to the point where you find somebody. I'll even use myself an example, and I'm still new to this and playing around. But I was able to take my pipeline and put it into ChatGPT
Yeah.
and run a bunch of different pieces of logic around it, around stack ranking my deals, give me feedback.
Cool.
Which of these deals are most at risk? It was actually pretty good. Now, there's still a human element where I had to kind of,
Yeah. Yeah. You
eyeball it and
coach it. Yeah.
verify. But why do I have to go buy a tool if I can run it right out of ChatGPT?
Yeah.
Right. So I think that's another element where if you get a real GTM engineer that can go kind of build some of these things, you might start realizing you don't need as many tools. So I think we're still at the in the early process, stages of really figuring out what are we trying to solve for. And you're going to get that build versus buy discussion,
Oh man, I love that. That's such a
right?
great point because that's really you're starting to see, and there's probably as there always is some room for both, but there's definitely some builders emerging with this engineer AI and stuff like that, and flow diagrams, and then there is a lot of newer vendors saying, hey, why don't you buy those types of things from me, and I'm a some version of chat gpt with the suit, hopefully with a little more proprietary stuff on top. But I love the vivers build. I think that's going to be an interesting debate. I mean, will we all just turn into builders? Maybe AI will make, my gut is there's always going to be lazy people like me who are just going to buy, uh, but maybe
But
not, man.
take it a step further, Gabe. And I don't want to go down a real big rabbit hole here. But over the weekend, I was playing with another platform that's come out that allows non-technical people like ourselves to put in some prompts and build applications.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
I mean, I'm not sure the application I built, is something I would distribute or put on prime time for anybody to use. But for my own personal use, it's good enough. It takes away
yeah,
from some of the stuff that I had used to have to do in spreadsheets, and it's put a
yeah.
nice, it's put a nice framework on it, nice UI. It actually built all the reports without even me prompting what reports to build. It kind of figured out what. I mean, it's amazing.
Well, and look, if it's easy enough, I think the more people, and you do have. I've got a couple kiddos, if you remember, and some of these games, roadblocks or Minecraft, that allow you to kind of like build. I mean, we've already created a little bit of a generation of builders. If it is somewhat readily available, I wouldn't be surprised if they jump in, because I just don't have that in my brain yet. But cool, man. I love it. All right. Well, I want to flip gears just for a minute and kind of
Sure.
talk the CX space, because you guys are obviously in that. And we have a bunch of people tuning in who are on that side of the fence as well. Go big picture. I mean, God, there seems like there's a new entrant there as well every day. I mean, how is that kind of playing out? How is conversational AI kind of, what's the state of the state over there? Any quick thoughts?
So first of all, you have the underlying technologies that everybody's using, right? Whether it's obviously all the name brands that we're all fully aware of, like OpenAI with ChatGPT, if it's Anthropic, Meta, Grok now, right? Like all of those underlying tools that we're using. Then there's other things that are on the CX side, companies like 11x that allow us to do things on the voice front that a lot of folks are using. So there's the underlying core infrastructure,
Yeah.
um, that in itself is rapidly developing and allowing us to do newer and cooler things. Then you have the layers on top of it. You have these companies that you said are emerging, like Yellow.ai and others, that are building on top of those core infrastructures,
Mm.
defining their own value added services on top in terms of technologies that allow you to do very core specific needs. And in this case, we're talking about customer service or
Yep.
HR or IT help desk. So that's there's a number of layers of innovation
Yeah.
that are taking place, and it's just a matter of who can keep up. So the exciting thing about the evolution or the maturity of all the vendors on the CX side of the house is it just keeps pushing one another
Yeah.
to get better, to use more, to deploy more. Because what often happens when you're kind of one of these core underlying technology providers, let's just take OpenAI as an example. One of the big challenges is often getting people to adopt some of the things that you're developing, right?
Yeah.
How do we get this ecosystem of companies that are building on top of mine to take advantage of the latest and greatest? Now it's, if you don't take advantage of their latest and greatest, the next person will, or there'll be a new entrant that will spin up tomorrow that will. So it's kind of a forcing function between all these
That's
different vendors.
awesome. Yeah. And
Whether
it's a,
you're a legacy player, whether you're somebody who's been in this space for 5 6 years, or now a new entrant that's launching tomorrow, you have to keep building and innovating to stay
because it's
on top
going
of it.
so fast. Yeah, two follow-ups on that. Again, just a little more on the space. How do you see, there are some core systems like the ticketing system that you and I were involved in.
Sure.
Do you see how do you see that changing at a high level? I mean, there needs to be a data layer. Agents are coming on top of this stuff, but we kind of talked about it on the sales side, but is there still a big room for kind of tools and agents, or do you start to see more like more of a data layer emerge, and underneath that is some LLMs and stuff like that, and then just on top of it there's agents who are either handling it or assisting people? Any quick thoughts on kind of how the stack changes?
I think the stack will flip on its head, but we're a long ways away from that.
Yeah,
As I kind of just outlined it before, the CRM 1.0, or if you're
similar
talking about like,
concept there. Yeah.
it's not going anywhere anytime soon because those platforms are purpose built for a human interface.
Yeah,
So until human beings actually stop keying data
really
into
don't
these
see it.
systems,
Yeah.
that's not going to go anywhere,
And
right?
so do you consider, much like the sales conversation, do you see, is it more aggressive here, like agents being replaced because of AI? Do you see more of the replacement conversation? Where on sales, you were like, look, it's very much an assistant and co-pilot. Similar talk track. I mean, people are always like, is customer service dead? Same idea. But how do you kind of describe that as you guys go about trying to automate and both facilitate the
I think on the CX side, there is a greater level and urgency to replace the agent work around, whether you call it a tier one, tier two.
Mhm.
So that low hanging fruit
Yeah.
that honestly the consumer or the employee has no interest in dealing with a human being,
And it
right?
hasn't for a while. I mean, the chatbots of the world, we're kind of trying to do that. I don't know how successful, pretty in some cases, but they've been wanting to do that for a while. So that's
Yeah.
not new.
I mean, that's it, right? So I think that's a layer that people have wanted to. There's a strong desire to eliminate that workload, and it has been for a long time. And as you said, chatbots were one example of
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
people were starting to make that investment. So I think that layer, um, there is, and varying degrees of success depending on the organization and the maturity. The second stage, where there is still a human engagement that's required, that's where you're seeing kind of these co-pilot or agent
Mhm.
assist tools
Yep.
or frameworks that are allowing the agent, once again, I'm going to continue to say this because I think it's a very important nuance, to not only be efficient, but more importantly, be effective. Because
Yeah.
I think before it was just efficiency, like, oh,
Yeah.
I just want
Yep.
them to handle a bunch of things. But now the realization is just having them move faster doesn't
Right.
necessarily mean we're delivering value on the other end. So effectiveness is really something that's creeped into the
Mm.
conversation unintentionally over the last, I would say 6, 8 months,
Yep.
where people are actually saying, wait, does it actually make us more effective? Because if the person just calls back because we didn't actually resolve their issue, then
Then
there
we
goes that efficiency gain.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Where do you see what is that, as you guys coach companies, what is it? You maybe start with some of those tier one kind of basic stuff. You go to what is that almost like path to success or AI adoption look like in CX? Any quick advice for the
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is you start with looking at your current engagement volumes. Where are they? But then the bigger thing is just don't take the lion's share of them. Let's say if let's say you get 100,000 tickets a month, and 25,000 of them are about this really complex issue. Let's say you're a travel airline, and
Yeah.
25,000 of your tickets are when people have travel delays. Doesn't mean just because it's the largest volume that's the easiest to automate, right? So you also have to look at
Mm,
complexity. So it's volume plus complexity, and looking at that intersection to say, what am I actually going to pilot with first that
cool.
I can get comfortable with as an organization, as a change management process, integrating into the
I
right
like
back end systems.
Yeah.
And then eventually you tackle the harder and harder ones. I think where I've seen
Mhm.
some of the early adopters burn themselves is they went for really hard things out of the gate, and their consumers weren't ready, their change management internally wasn't ready, their
Yeah.
systems weren't ready, and then all of a sudden a year later they're going back and saying, "Well, this wasn't effective." And it's like you actually try to bite off more than you could chew right now.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, you got to kind of crawl, walk, run, so to say. Cool. All right. Hey, just a couple things before we wrap here. So, on this side of the house, for some of these leaders who are trying to get into it, any quick advice? I mean, you hit a bunch of topics, but thinking about CX and optimizing AI, anything you'd leave the audience with on that front?
I think a few things. One, do your homework.
Yeah.
There's so much data that, as you said, there's a proliferation of tools. Do your data, rely on your networks,
Mm,
um, and then the third is just educate yourself, and
yeah.
not just educating yourself about the individual tools that you might think about, but start playing around with some of the underlying frameworks that are out there, right? Whether it's an Anthropic or Perplexity, just getting familiar with even how you prompt
Yeah.
these tools is going to make you more effective when you roll something out.
Awesome. Awesome. I appreciate it. I think that's an interesting one. Yeah. Got it. Nothing better than getting your hands dirty just a little bit. So, okay, cool. In closing, Vic, yeah, if someone wanted to dive in a little deeper, continue the dialogue, what's the best way to do that?
You can always reach out to me on LinkedIn, Vikas Bhambri, and more than happy to take a conversation about either what we're seeing on the CX side of the house in the world we live in, employee experience CX, and then of course if there's any other sales leaders out there that want to, as long as you don't come in me and pitch 50 tools, But you really want to have an engaged conversation about what's out there, what's going on. More than happy to have that conversation.
I love it, man. Yeah, we're all trying to learn. So, again, appreciate you taking the time, Vic, for the audience.
A
Have a
pleasure.
fantastic day.